Hey, welcome back to A Constantly Racing Mind, the channel where we dissect the chaotic, the brilliant, and the bloody. Today we are descending straight into the 9 circles of hell. Literally. We're talking about the brand new 2026 action horror comedy, They Will Kill You. At first glance, this film appears to be another survival horror film that critiques the wealthy, similar to Ready or Not. In fact, it's set to open today. Alongside Ready or Not 2, here I come, creating significant competition. Check out either my spoiler or my non-spoiler reviews. Oh, by the way, Scream is also still in theaters. Scream 7. Both feature a female protagonist trapped in a deadly game with wealthy satanic elites. But as we'll explore today, They Will Kill You is doing something entirely different. It's a hyper-stylized anime-influenced barbaric ballet that blends brutal slasher elements with high-octane martial arts. And tonight, we're stepping into something darker, a film built on blood, dread, and the feeling that once you walk through the wrong door, there is no way to back out. So we're going to break down the insane craft behind this film, the genre legends in the cast, and the incredibly unique visual styles that make this movie tick. We will drive into the full spoiler road, exploring the behind-the-scenes magic, thematic elements, full plot spoilers, and of course, my final thoughts and rating for this film. Hey, I'm Rob, and this is A Constantly Racing Mind. If you're new here, we dive into sci-fi, horror, action-adventure, prop culture, and all things geek, because around here, every frame tells a story. So, walking into the theater, this film seems to be like your standard horror comedy. But I think that They Will Kill You operates more like a live-action anime, masquerading as a high-rise slasher. They Will Kill You follows an ex-convict named Asia Reaves, who answers a help-wanted ad to work as a housekeeper at an upscale historic New York City high-rise known as the Virgil. Her true motivation for taking the job is to find and rescue her estranged younger sister, Maria, who also works in the building as a maid. However, Asia soon discovers that the pristine building's strict rules hide a dark secret. The high-rise has a history of unexplained disappearances and is actually a death trap run by a satanic cult made up of wealthy elites led by the building's superintendent. The cult marks Asia as their next human sacrifice, but they make a fatal mistake. They vastly underestimate her. Now, hardened by her time in prison, Asia knows her way around a fight. What ensues is an action-packed, blood-soaked fight for survival as Asia turns the tables on her attackers and battles her way through the building's satanic inhabitants to save her sister. Director Kirill Sokolov explicitly cited the anime Afro Samurai as his primary inspiration for the main character's journey. He wanted to test the absolute limits of narrative restriction by asking how much creative freedom can be incorporated into a single film. He loved how Afro Samurai effectively blended samurai, robots, and demons, and he wanted to bring that same boundary-pushing, unrestricted energy to live action. As a result, the film's visual identity is pure stylistic whiplash, blending the aesthetics of several iconic filmmakers into one cohesive barbaric ballet. Now, the movie takes place in a historic New York high-rise called the Virgil. But inside that classical architecture, Sokolov utilizes a wild fusion of visual styles, Wes Anderson's symmetry. During several tense chase scenes through the building's tight spaces, the film frames the action to look almost exactly like scenes out of the fantastic Mr. Fox. The cinematography heavily relies on distinctly Anderson-esque symmetry, which creates a bizarrely pristine backdrop for the absolute carnage taking place. The film also uses stylistic chapter titles to temporarily break away from the action, providing character history before throwing the audience right back into the bloodbath, a classic Tarantino move. It also features massive, vicious sword battles and specifically imitates the famous continuous corridor hallway fight from Park Chan-wook's Oldboy. The movie heavily relies on gross-out, absurd humor reminiscent of Evil Dead 2. It embraces Splatstick mania with chaotic, monstrous visuals. Think of Sam Raimi's last film, Send Help. which is as if he had directed Lord of the Flies. All right, everyone, just a reminder, we are now crossing the threshold into deep spoiler territory. If you haven't seen They Will Kill You, go watch it and come back. And yes, this is a spoiler version of my review, but just in case, here is your warning. 10 years earlier, on a rainy night, Asia and Maria are hiding in a gas station trying to get away from their abusive father. Asia has already made it her mission to protect Maria, but when their father enters the store looking for them, that plan falls apart fast. The girls try to sneak out, but Maria has taken something. The alarm goes off, and their father comes after them. Outside, one of his friends cuts off their path with a car. With nowhere left to run, Asia pulls a gun and shoots her father. She flees, gets caught, and ends up in prison. He survives, and even after that, he keeps control over Maria for another 8 years, before dying of cancer. Maria is left alone, damaged and desperate, which is exactly why the Virgil works on her. It looks like a refuge. Instead, it is a cult waiting for a sacrifice. Maria agrees to join, and the cost of immortality is a human life. Another maid was supposed to die, but Asia instead gets inside the building after learning the truth from a private detective, played by Angus Sampson of Insidious fame. And that leads to the final nightmare. Isabel's ritual, now Asia's, Maria's initiation, and a choice that now demands she kill her own sister. At the top of the Virgil, the film drops all pretense and turns into a full inferno, with chains, hooks, and upside-down crosses hanging over a room that looks more like a slaughterhouse than a sanctuary. Let's talk about the actual mechanics of the Virgil and the film's chaotic progression. Once Asia realizes the Virgil is a trap, she goes on a relentless, blood-soaked rampage through the building's air vents, elevators, and corridors. The film doesn't hold back on its R rating. It goes beyond simple explosions featuring decapitations, several severed limbs, people being set on fire, and victims getting launched across rooms from point-blank shotgun blasts. There's even a moment where Beetz' character, flat out, punches a child in the face. However, despite Jeremy Reed's exceptional production design, the film slightly falters in its portrayal of Dante's Inferno. We do get a brief glimpse of the specific sins, like the lust floor featuring an orgy, and the gluttony floor featuring a massive kitchen and dining room. But the movie skips the majority of the other circles of hell. When Asia fights dozens of people on the gluttony floor, they all wear the same generic cloaks rather than floor-specific designs, making the aesthetic feel a bit monotonous and like a missed opportunity to give the building more personality. The creative team was probably going for the Tarantino look of uniformed minions attacking Uma Thurman in Kill Bill. Then we hit the controversial third act. Now, right before the climax, the movie suddenly slams on the brakes. This seems to be the biggest contention folks have with this film. The relentless momentum halts entirely to deliver a heavy exposition dump, exploring the deep trauma, abandonment issues, and therapeutic catharsis of forgiveness between the two sisters. Now, I guess the writers were trying to add some depth to this otherwise mindless constant killing spree. I will say, though, that this is one thing I thought Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, does better in the sense of spreading these issues out throughout the film in short bursts. To be honest, it isn't that big of a deal, as it sets up and foreshadows an upcoming betrayal. We know that Lilith, or Lily, and Ray are an interracial couple, and we would wonder why Ray is helping Asia, especially at this time. Ray intercepts Asia while she is in the vents, bringing about this reunion. The problem is that this moment is where Asia begins to find out who her sister really is. But if you can make it through that dramatic pause, you are rewarded with a wildly ridiculous final boss battle between Arquette's character, Lily, and the cult. More about that in a moment. I guess this is a good place, Zazie, to tell you about the supernatural elements. The supernatural plays a massive, chaotic role in They Will Kill You, twisting the film from a standard survival slasher into a bizarre supernatural battle. The wealthy elites running the Virgil are a satanic cult who use the high-rise to trap and sacrifice people. The cult's core leaders, Lily, Patricia Arquette, and Ray, Patterson Joseph, are literally immortal and have lived through different historical time periods. they offer this immortality to others, including Asia's sister, Maria, if they are willing to suffer complete moral degradation and sacrifice someone else. And a major supernatural twist happens early on when the cult members that Asia brutally maims and dismembers do not stay dead. Their bodies supernaturally or magically reassemble, turning the film into a relentless gauntlet in which Asia has to fight enemies who keep coming back to life. The creative team also included in the film a murky magical logic regarding the cultist's flesh, suggesting that the skin can be rewritten to keep them alive and heal them even after taking explosive damage. Also, because the villains can survive brutal dismemberment, the film features hilariously bizarre bodily anomalies. This includes Tom Felton's character holding his own severed head, a woman walking around with a stump for a neck who later grows a comical small head, and as mentioned earlier, reminiscent of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, we have a roving eyeball. It belongs to Heather Graham's character, and after she has her head blown off, her eyeball follows Ray and Asia as they navigate the ventilation system. After falling out of an air duct, Asia grabs it and squishes it. And of course, if you invoke Satan, then demonic possession becomes a thing. This movie steadily escalates its supernatural stakes. Here we find a shadow of Satan lurking in the background. However, the cult worships a talking demon pig head. I need to make a small comparison here between this film and Ready or Not 2. Here I come. While the films are similar, there are some differences. Lily is explaining to Maria that in order to join the cult, they must sign their names. In my mind, I was thinking of the big black book of Ready or Not 2. That is not the case. Actually, on the altar, there is a large pig's head on a pole with a chain attached to the head and a pen. This is a pen that the new acolyte signs their name with on the head of the pig. Oh yes, the pig talks. Before this, I thought the film was weird, but no. This just kicked up the weirdness to 11. Ray had admitted to Lily that he no longer wanted to sacrifice people, as they were no longer the same immoral people who had once lived in that area. Lily is forced to kill him. As Maria is ready to seal the deal and sign her name onto the pig's head, she instead signs Asia's name, cuts off the strip of the pig with the name, and tosses it to Asia as she unveils herself with her new immortality. Carrying her sister out of the Virgil, Asia finds Samson's character outside waiting. After loading the dead sister into the back of the car, a miracle happens. The name changes on the Pigskin, to Maria's. The girls hug, and all is well in the world. During the hand-to-hand battles, the camera doesn't just sit still. It seamlessly swings around the room to capture different angles of the attack, occasionally utilizing quick cuts to intentionally jostle the viewer back and forth, matching the protagonist's disorientation. This stylistic melting pot makes total sense when you look at the masterminds behind the camera. The director, Russian-born Kirill Sokolov, often dubbed Hollywood's young Tarantino, he's known for his energetic, hyper-violent, dark comedies like Why Don't You Just Die? Sokolov actually relocated to the United States and spent years studying American audiences to understand cultural subtleties, noting that achieving the perfect balance of intense, sensitive material was his greatest challenge during the writing phase. Kirill Sokolov comes to They Will Kill You with a very specific voice. Being born in 1989 in St. Petersburg, Russia, he originally earned a master's degree in physics and technology of nanostructures. But filmmaking gradually pulled him into another direction. Now, while studying physics, he started making short films with friends using homemade blood effects and building his style from pure trial and error. The movies that shaped him early on were The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Evil Dead 2, Oldboy, and Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2. And you can feel that mix in his work. Graphic violence, dark comedy, and a love of genre of cinema that is playful as much as brutal. In 2013, he formally shifted toward film and enrolled in the advanced courses for film directors and scriptwriters in Russia, later completing his diploma short, The Flame, in 2015. Since then, he has built a career not only as a director, but also as an editor and screenwriter, with work across features, music videos, and commercials. That background is important because They Will Kill You feels like the work of a a filmmaker who understands rhythms, escalation, and visual impact from multiple angles, not just direction alone. Now, co-writer Alex Litvak brings a different kind of genre experience. He's known for scripts such as Predators and The Three Musketeers, as well as additional franchise development work on Masters of the Universe that makes him a valuable counterweight to Sokolov, someone with more traditional commercial action writing experience helping shape a movie that still clearly belongs to Sokolov stylistically. Alex's resume suggests something different from Sokolov's. Litvak's background leans more toward commercial genre architecture, action, franchise mechanics, studio-facing narrative construction, and big concept pulp. In a 2021 interview, Litvak said Predators was his first produced film and that he wrote The Three Musketeers right after it, which places him into mainstream action-adventure writing. So on paper, Litvak, it looks to me like Alex helped make Sokolov's instinctive chaos more marketable, narratively legible, and easier to package as a studio genre film. And for a film like this pairing makes a lot of sense for They Will Kill You. Sokolov brings the twisted tone, the violent comic energy, the love of contained location escalation, and the cinephile mashup instinct. Litvak brings studio genre experience, action thriller structure, a track record with larger commercial properties, and writing experience that can support a more accessible hook. Together, they help produce the movie's pitchable identity, a woman trapped in a satanic high-rise who has to fight her way out. Sold as a mix of Ready or Not and The Raid, that sort of clean elevator pitch feels closer to Litvak's commercial genre lane, while the bloodier, stranger tonal swings feel closer to Sokolov's directorial DNA. This is the flagship film for Nocturna, a brand new horror label run by Andy and Barbara Muschiettis. You know them as the powerhouse producing and directing siblings duo behind It and Mama. Andy Muschiettis noted that Nocturna was created to explore various subgenres of psychological horror, and he specifically loved Sokolov's knack for transforming unsettling, violent scenarios into something strangely entertaining, with a vibrant, splatter-driven energy. Now, the cinematography was handled by Isaac Bauman, with editing by Luke Doolan, but the real standout is production designer Jeremy Reed. Reed, known for his atmospheric work on Gretel and Hansel and Dust Bunny, built the film's vibrant sets. The visual tone of this film contains a high-contrast color palette that balances cold, clinical tones with warm, aggressive accents to create a grindhouse aesthetic. Another thing to note about Jeremy's set design is that some scenes utilize Art Deco aesthetics and stylized retro-futuristic color palette. This feels highly curated and reminiscent of the visual symmetry found in a Wes Anderson film or the time variance authority sets from Loci. I wonder why. This leads me to believe that Reed relies on psychology, as some sets carry a liminal energy. For example, the hallway looks like a transitional area meant to be busy but is eerily quiet. The combination of the heavy wood, thick carpet, and warm lighting suggests a space that is physically comfortable but psychologically imposing. The Virgil is intentionally designed as a humorous interpretation of Dante's Inferno, with each floor dedicated to a specific sin. Now, Dante Alighieri, better known as Dante, was a medieval Italian poet, best known for Inferno, the first part of the Divine Comedy, in which he journeys through hell with a Roman poet, Virgil, as his guide. That makes the Virgil an appropriate name for the building at the center of this film, because it does not just try to trap Asia inside a nightmare, it guides her through it, floor by floor and secret by secret. The high-rise becomes its own modern Inferno. A movie with this much momentum requires a driving score, and they brought in heavy hitter, Emmy and Grammy winner Carlos Rafael Rivera. Rivera is a legend, having composed for The Queen's Gambit, Godless, and The Hacks. His track list alone hints at the madness, featuring titles like The Rescue, The Fire, The Pig, and The Eyeball. Now let's talk about the cast, because they fully commit to this madness. The film is anchored by Zazie Beetz, Joker, Deadpool 2, playing Asia Reaves. Asia is an ex-convict who served 10 years in prison after a gunshot incident where she failed to protect her younger sister from their abusive father. Hardened and taught how to fight behind bars, she gets a job as a maid at the Virgil to rescue her estranged sister, Maria. Beetz is an absolute powerhouse here. I think everybody's praising her for the passion blazing in her expressive eyes and her fluid, acrobatic movements. What's incredible is how much of her own stunt work Beetz did, including a jaw-dropping sequence where she fights off thugs with an axe that is literally on fire. This wasn't CGI. They used practical effects. The stunt performers were drenched head to toe in flame-retardant gel. Beetz wore flame-retardant clothing, and she even had a wig dipped in flame-retardant liquid velcroed to her head so that she could rip it off if caught fire. They had to be fire extinguished after every single take, and she starts this gauntlet of a movie fighting completely barefoot. That's fine if you keep your floors clean, but this woman is dealing with the cultists and taking the wrath. I would think foot injuries would be more widespread. Ask John McClane. Her sister Maria is played by industry star Myha'la. Myha'la also got in on the action, doing many of her own stunts and taking some real hits. She even mentioned suffering from neck pains for days after taking a punch on screen. She also spent much of the shoot covered in sticky, uncomfortable fake blood, which she noted, and I am sure Samara Weaving and Catherine Newton can attest to, is a staple of the horror genre. Then we have the villains, a satanic cult of the 1%. Patricia Arquette, the Oscar winner, plays Lily, the Irish superintendent of the building and the leader of the cult. Arquette brings a calm, unnerving restraint to the role. Interestingly, Arquette approached the villain with the mindset that bad people always justify their actions. They lack the empathy that the protagonist, Asia, possesses. Arquette also adopted a bizarre and somewhat inconsistent Irish brogue for the role. Fun behind-the-scenes fact, Arquette actually had a scene cut where she chanted a demonic incantation while wearing a pig's head. It was filmed the morning after the U.S. election, and she felt so genuinely creeped out by the vibe that it was just eventually scrapped. Heather Graham has a part. She plays Sharon, a scene-stealing, effervescent cult member. Graham was thrilled to finally play a kick-ass action role, doing her own stunts and engaging in visceral hand-to-hand combat. Then there's Tom Felton. Yes, Draco Malfoy himself is here playing Kevin, another one of those elite Satanists. Kind of fits, huh? Patterson Joseph, known primarily for British TV, plays Ray, adding even more depth to the ensemble. What elevates They Will Kill You beyond a standard slasher is its thematic undercurrent. It's a story of female rage, but I think, as others have noted, it isn't rooted purely in revenge. It's rooted in love. Asia's rage is a protective force that saves her sister, allowing her to tap into warrior energy rather than become a meek victim. It's rare to see a horror movie given a theatrical release that centers entirely on two black women saving themselves and each other, adding a refreshing layer of representation to the genre. Furthermore, the film offers a biting social commentary on the elite 1%. The villains aren't just Satanists. They are wealthy socialites who believe their power and money give them the right to abuse and sacrifice those they seem beneath them. Sound familiar? Overall, this is a fun, action-packed, over-the-top revenge film. It is also genuinely hilarious, especially during the battle scenes, which reminded me of Sisu, and while the flaming axe fight stands out in the trailer, that footage barely prepares you for how wild the full scene is in the movie itself. There are several laugh-out-loud moments, especially once the action really kicks in. As mentioned before, the pause before the final act did not bother me as much as the fact that Asia remains mobile and incredibly agile after being stabbed repeatedly throughout the film. I've had surgery in my stomach area a few times, and I can tell you right now, no one is moving as Reaves does after taking multiple torso wounds. This is where the movie pushes things a bit too far. Even so, Zazie Beetz is a strong protagonist. She never plays her role as a passive final girl. She goes on the offensive almost immediately, and that gives the character a different kind of energy. I also want to note that only a few months ago, she co-starred with Sam Rockwell, Michael Pena, Juno Temple, and Haley Lou Richardson in the excellent AI horror film Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, where she also gave out a standout performance. Honestly, I struggled to rate this one. I liked it. I liked the action, the visuals, the music. Zazie's performance, and the way Patricia, Heather, Tom, and Patterson lead into these psychopathic Satanist roles. But I also kept coming back to the kind of sucker punch feeling, a beautiful hot mess. The sibling dynamic did not work as well as the one between Weaving and Newton in Ready or Not 2, and that weakens the story. For all the film's excess in action, blood, and gore, the emotional core left me a little cold. The sisters' reconciliation never felt as genuine as the relationship between Grace and Faith in Ready or Not 2. So in the end, I land at a 3 out of 5 stars. The acting, photography, pacing, and score all work. What did not fully resonate with me was the story. As wild and outrageous as the film is, that part never really comes together. That does it for my comprehensive deep dive into the barbaric ballet of Kirill Sokolov's latest madness. If you enjoyed this breakdown of They Will Kill You, the incredible craft team, and the blood-soaked visuals, if you enjoyed this review, subscribe to A Constantly Racing Mind for more deep dives into sci-fi, horror, action-adventure, and prop culture, and all things geek, because here every frame tells a story. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Check out our Intelligent Filmgoers apparel, and don't forget to use Run P so you know the best time to make that theater run without missing the moments that matter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.